Hey everyone, Troy Hammond here. Welcome back, or welcome to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast. On today's episode, you're going to hear from Barney Chunn. Barney is the co-founder of CONQA, a construction QA software in New Zealand and Australia, and potentially going global now. Barney is one of the most authentic, vulnerable, awesome guys that I've had the pleasure of working with for many, many years. Love him, love his story, and love that we're just chatting on this podcast about really cool everyday shit, the pros, the cons, the hard things, the good things, the success stories. And so I think you're really going to learn a lot from this person who talks about what he loves in authentic people, and is exactly that. Looking at the guy in the mirror is the most authentic guy you'll ever meet. So strap in, enjoy, and I hope you really get something out of this one.
Kia ora. Thanks for tuning into the We Fucking Love Startups podcast, brought to you by Talent Army.
So, hey, dude, you've been one of these guys that's like been a bit of an entrepreneurial grafter from like the get-go, right? Like I've seen a video of you selling sushi containers on the morning show.
Paul Henry show.
Yeah.
That was me.
R.I.P. Paul Henry. Yeah. Where is he? What's he doing now? Has he got a show again now?
I think he started something recently, didn't he? But he fucked off for like 2 or 3 years and, I don't know, lived in Napa Valley.
Yeah, he got in trouble for being abrasive.
Yeah, racist.
Yeah, racist. That's right. Yeah. Napa Valley, lived in Napa Valley and came back.
Something like that. I thought he was a bit of a dick to me, actually.
Was he?
I'd never
He was
heard
a bit of a dick, right?
He was a bit of a dick, yeah. But so we did a slight tangent from CONQA, but rep the old one, Sushi Co, which was one of my first. But they put it out like a Dragon's Den thing.
Yeah.
But I'd never heard of the Dragon's Den. So he just said, okay, we're going to do Dragon's Den and Scene, and was tried to be Alan Sugar or whoever was the original Dragon's Den person. But I'd never heard of it. And so I was sitting there kind of going, what the fuck's going on?
So this is as you're in the studio?
Yeah, no like producer told me beforehand or anything like that. Yeah, so I was sitting in a seat. So you can see me kind of go, fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And it was 6 a.m, and I was, freaked out, 24 or something. But we raised 16 grand in the first 24 hours on Kickstarter.
Shit.
And by the last day, so 30 days or whatever, we'd raised 16.5 grand.
Wow. So
it went vroom, and then just totally flatlined.
Yeah. What did that teach you?
I was thrilled in the end.
Because it was a
reusable, collapsible sushi container. I mean, I think it taught me a couple of things about marketing, and maybe constancy or consistency. So we put out a whole bunch of stuff, and we raised, and it was Kickstarter, so we didn't actually raise anything, but we had pledges of 16 grand. And then we sort of stopped. People weren't really posting much about us because a lot of websites were saying, oh, we don't really do Kickstarters anymore because we post about them and then they don't do anything afterwards, and it kind of got a bit of a bad name, and so we just couldn't get any coverage. So I think, being consistent, finding a really good strategy and a plan first would probably have been quite useful. But actually, I think the other thing that I realized in hindsight, because I was trying to start CONQA at the same time, was that it would have been a total disaster to have had both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as someone that has 6 companies, I confirm.
I just wouldn't have been able to, I would have done everything badly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I did anything great, but we, fuck it. Maybe we did.
Yeah, man.
But,
do you, fucking CONQA's doing fucking well, man. And, enjoy it, bro.
No,
enjoy it.
Yeah.
Sushi company, not so well.
No. Although, got to be honest, because I've still got the Facebook. And still, what's that? 8 years later, we get orders coming in.
Really?
Yeah.
Shit, man. That's like old mate Reusable that we had Bobby on the podcast. I'm not sure if you saw that came out. Yeah, he did the whole in Wellington, the reusable bowl that you could take out to all the takeaway stores. Went out and bought a container load of reusables. Had repped it for pretty hard for 2 years. Yeah, didn't take off. And so now he's got that company Fussy that does specific catering to so you can order whatever you want. Like when I'm going to the high tech awards, and I can sit down and say and this is what I'd prefer to eat, etc. And so
nice.
Not that the high tech awards did that, but other companies. And so, but yeah, man, it's and I think now with his new company, every customer gets a free bowl.
Nice.
From the previous company.
I mean, I still think all of that stuff's great. And I think part of the whole process of coming to what we ended up with CONQA, but the same for everyone. I think nobody's first company is ever their first company. You know, like in a way, my first company was teaching guitar at 15, right? I would put out posters at schools and go talk to music teachers, and built up a client list and would teach kids guitar till I didn't have any more room to teach them.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd set the price, and I'd build out a curriculum, and they made me a bit of money in high school, and then we started playing at pubs, and again we just went out to all the pubs and said, do you need a band on a Friday night? We'll only charge you $100 per person, so 4 of us were charging $400, everyone else was charging more. So, I think for me, there's kind of it's easier to see when you look backwards, but there is always a long line. I think with most people who've started companies, there's quite a long line of entrepreneurial activity, even if you didn't think about it that way.
Yep. When
you were doing it, you can see this kind of why don't we just do that then?
Yeah.
Well, I need some money. I can't get a job at the Baker's Delight up the road. I can play guitar.
Yeah.
I'll teach it.
Yeah, I did the same thing, man. I still paint canvases, like paintings, and I used to paint these paintings at home and then take them around door to door and say that this famous artist was selling the paintings. Didn't say my name. I'd sign a different name.
Yeah.
And then just make money for the weekend.
And that's kind of how it all starts, I reckon.
Yeah, man. And I think, like you get that thrill, right, of like, this shit's not as hard as I thought. Like everyone's ultimate scare or initial fear is the sales component of it. But they don't realize that we sell all the time in everything that we do. And when you believe in something, it's just so much easier to sell it anyway. And so
it becomes I don't think I'm a very good salesperson. Well, I'm actually not. But if I believe in something, I can be authentic. If I am authentic in my belief in something, I think I can sell it.
But they're the best salespeople. The people that don't realize that they're good salespeople because they're just doing what they feel like is authentic.
Yeah.
They're the best salespeople in my opinion.
Yeah. There are some tricks you got to learn, like not waffling and, not just kind of like thinking about your passion, but also what's the value to the people that you're talking to. Because, if I'm selling guitar lessons to somebody who hates music, even though I'm passionate about it, it's pointless. So there are things you got to learn, I think, as you go. But again, it starts early and you pick up those lessons pretty quickly because you don't want to waste your own time, teaching and you'll know. But teaching a kid who does not want to be there sucks.
Yeah, my son quit guitar lessons after 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I was like, fair enough.
Yeah. 6 weeks. You'd either pick it up or not, probably. Pick up the bug.
Oh, he was terrible. Yeah, he was terrible. Sorry if he's watching or listening to this. Sorry, Mitch. So you, ultimate decision, right? Do I go all in on a sushi company, sushi in a container, or CONQA? Feels like you made the right decision, obviously. But how did you get to, CONQA? How was that happening at the same time?
So I was working kind of part-time, and so I had spare thinking time. And again, the thread of entrepreneurial activity had come beforehand, but also I'd gone to school with a guy who had ended up starting this company, and they were doing inspections. It was actually out of this building, and he was doing inspections for rental property managers. And so, Quinovic or whatever, I don't know who those clients were, but those kind of people. And it was really simple checklist, take photos of the bedroom, everything's cool, all right, sweet. And he bought an apartment when we were 21, and it was just kind of like this wild unlock where we all went, what the fuck? I'm making $35,000 a year or whatever people were earning then, and so kind of got this kind of through him saw a bit of a pathway, and knew that we wanted to start something. So this is me and Dan, who's one of the other co-founders here. We were having conversations around, were
you studying anything in the field?
No, I studied philosophy and English.
Yeah, it feels the right decision to go into startups.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised at how applicable a lot of philosophy in terms of the way that we studied is, and the topics that we studied. We did medical ethics and shit like that, some really interesting modern applicability stuff.
I fucking love philosophy. I'm taking the piss, right? But I think for me, the older I get, the wiser I get, the more I'm reading, philosophy books and going back to it and trying to understand simple, clear messages from life, and like what's applicable in life and the likes.
Well, I think, I think that there's like there's mathematical ways you can think about philosophy. Like simple argument and analysis is like philosophy 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It's like one of the first papers we did, but it's does A equal B, and you learn to recognize good arguments and bad arguments, and recognizing a good argument is a really important thing when you're doing when you're trying to start and run a business, because you're arguing all the time.
Yeah, it's all
in the sense that
right?
you're going, is this the better idea or is this the better idea? How am I analyzing what the right ideas are?
Yeah.
So having a an education in analysis, I think, is quite useful.
Nice.
Plus, I could argue my way out of issues with the other founders early on.
Yeah,
they caught on quick, but yeah.
And what did the rest of them study?
Dan did mechanical engineering and Pete did electrical engineering.
Oh yeah, so
yeah, but we were all friends with this one guy, and so all three of us kind of realized, well, like it really felt like in New Zealand there was a lot of great companies being started, and there was this whole startup thing, and we were just out of varsity, as I said, and sort of going, well, what do you want to do with your life? What's your career going to look like? And I think all of us kind of thought that we could do it and wanted to test that theory. And so that's probably the real genesis of the whole idea.
And how did the idea come about then? Was it like, let's get into a room and figure out what we want to do? Or did someone bring the idea to the table?
Sort of neither. It was, okay, we actually thought about, and this is part of this friend of ours, he gave us a little bit of this framework, which was, what are the characteristics of a great company? And so that's what we wanted to start with, kind of almost retrofitting or creating a parameter, which was like, if it fits in here, we might be onto something. So those characteristics were like B2B.
Yeah.
We wanted to sell to companies.
Yeah.
It was software. It was an enormous global TAM. So we were happy to take a very small slither of a massive pie.
Yeah.
And it had to be like an efficiency gain. So we really wanted something that was not like an add-on or a nice to have or anything like that. Really tried to find something that was like business critical, that we could do more efficiently or effectively than was being done currently.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing that we really started thinking about was the TAM.
Yeah.
What are the things that are like fundamental globally? And so that really quickly led to construction.
Yeah.
So we had thought about education first. As I said earlier, I was teaching guitar. Dan was also teaching a bit of guitar.
Yeah.
I think Pete was a tutor through most of varsity. So we'd all done some teaching to a certain degree, and felt like, huge TAM. But in edutech, there's some amazing stuff going on. But for us at the time, we felt like we couldn't really see a commercial viability.
Yeah.
I think we were going like tutors and things. And, I remember not having enough money to buy software when I was teaching. So then we went into housing, residential housing. That felt, we couldn't see a problem there were lots of problems, but we couldn't see like a common thread through that. But when we went to infrastructure and commercial, it became really clear to us that the connection between what was going on a project and what was being understood at head office was, oftentimes literally days apart. And
how did you discover that? Through researching, by going out and actually visiting sites and trying to find your idea?
Yeah, we had friends who were, starting their careers as engineers in construction, site managers, things like that. We actually just called a lot of head offices and said we were at uni and doing a project and could we talk to people. But yeah, we'd drop into sites, start talking to people. Dan and I had done some labouring at high school and through varsity, and so we knew sort of, we had hivers.
Yeah.
And we wrote down a list of questions to ask people. What sucks at your job? What do you hate? Literally that kind of thing. And I was pretty apprehensive about getting told to fuck off all the time. But as soon as you ask somebody have a whinge to me about what you hate about your job, half of them are like, yeah, fucking this thing, and my boss is a dick and all the rest of it. But we quite quickly, as we had multiple conversations, I think by the end we'd talked to 100 or so people, there was a clear connector issue between a project and the head office. And so some people would drive all day, visit 3 or 4 different projects, get an update, drive back to the office, present that update. That was them, do the same thing the next day, which is just a massive waste of time. So suddenly we were looking at commercial and infrastructure construction, which is a massive TAM. I mean, in New Zealand, it's like 10% of GDP, and I think that's pretty similar around the world. B2B, big time.
Efficiency, big tech.
Big tech efficiency, and software was going to be a way to transfer information much more seamlessly than a guy driving around in his ute, looking at a stack of paper on 4 different projects.
Yeah.
So it really quickly fit those characteristics. And I think that for us, that's really served us well, because a great idea that you come up with, I feel like you kind of finger in the wind that hopefully it's going to be great, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if we, I think by retrofitting and looking for characteristics that are important in a successful organization helped us actually mitigate the risk of starting something that was cool but useless.
And it's a fucking good investor story. Like when you're 3 guys trying to start up a business and you can actually say, like, this is methodically how we went about it.
Yeah, it's probably true.
Yeah,
it's probably true. Yeah.
I think a lot of people do get, like, a lot of startup founders I meet, they're down in the weeds thinking about something, and then they find a little problem, but they stay down there in the weeds, and it's not until they've invested so much time and energy and resource that they come up and actually look at what the TAM or what the market is, or if it's a thing, and then they're too far invested.
And then you're just lucky if the TAM's big enough or there's enough commercial opportunity there or whatever. And that luck, I think we didn't want to be successful because we got lucky that way. We wanted to retrofit it and make sure that we had the right characteristics right at the beginning.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, that became part of our bones as a business.
Yeah.
Like, we know other people who have started businesses in construction tech and prop tech who have come from the industry and experienced pain in their role as a project manager or whatever. And what I think is common there is that they are looking at it from their lens.
Yeah.
And so they solve a problem in the way that they experienced it. Whereas we were super agnostic. We were just dispassionately looking at this industry and where there were breaks in the communication chain and what that meant and what that cost, and we're able to kind of like not start from any one position, but look at it as a whole, as an ecosystem. And I think that was really useful because we were able to focus on the biggest problems and the biggest pain points, sort of do like a effort reward map and start from there.
Yeah. And then what do you do next? So 3 non-technical founders, right?
Yeah, that was a fucking dumb idea.
Yeah, what do you do? Like, you're like, oh shit, we have to bring another founder on, or do we hide?
Yeah, so we just went out on Facebook and chatted to a couple of people who came back to us. And this one guy, Neftali, he came in. He'd actually started with the Aura Boys when they were Identify. So they came out of like a tech weekend or something like that. And then he came and joined us, and he built the MVP.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it was weird, because he'd be building this thing, but none of us had been in a tech company before. None of us knew anything about code.
Just standing every shot of watching.
Just fucking going, what is this? Knew nothing about it. So, I mean, we were just calling all these companies, trying to get leads and go, what do you think about this prototype? What do you think about this? Which was, again, great, because as soon as the MVP was ready, we had 6 customers.
Wow. So MVP was ready. You already had 6 customers just based off.
Well, they were helping us build it. We had the 100 people that we'd talked to, the ones that were big on this being a problem. We just called them back up and said, hey, this problem that we talked about a couple of months ago, we're actually going to build a solution to that. We're building a software company around this problem. We'd love to talk to you about whether or not what we're building would be beneficial to you. Can we come in? We'll buy a Sammy, whatever.
Yeah, nice.
And by the time we got through to the MVP, we probably had about 15 people we were still talking with who were helping us build it, in the sense of like giving feedback and doing some testing. But immediately, I think, December 2015, when we released it, we had 6 customers straight away.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And then what did you, so if you look back now retrospectively, is like where you're at now, where you thought you'd be?
Nah. No, it's harder than we thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think? Where did you think you'd be right now? So how many years? So 2015. So 8 years in now.
8 years in. Yep. We're 8 years old, which feels both like a lifetime and like we're in our infancy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we just thought it would be easier.
Yeah.
You know, we saw this mate of ours buying apartments after like a year in it, and
You sure he wasn't a drug dealer?
yeah, I mean, fuck, looking back, he might have been. He is in Colombia now. No, he. I don't know what he did, but for us, yeah, it was just harder. It was harder, and that's been a lot of the fun.
Yeah. What's been the hardest thing that you've had to solve or upskill in?
I reckon the hardest thing for us has been saying no to great opportunities. Because there are lots of problems in the construction industry, and there are lots of ways you can solve them, and some of them are like big, meaty problems that, if solved, could be incredible businesses. But we've never done a massive round. We've always run pretty lean, and you know, I think that comes with a lot of benefits. But we have to be focused all the time. And any time we've strayed a little bit away from our core and tried to do 3 or 4 different things, we've done all of them less well than we should have. And so we have to keep coming back to saying no. And what's funny about that is like you become a founder or whatever because you're good at saying yes to trying new shit out.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool, we'll try that out. That's great. You know, and I was trying different businesses, and so with Dan and Pete. And then suddenly you've got one that's working, and you have to 180 completely and go no to a great idea, because now you're in execution mode, you're not in ideation mode. So I think that for people who are, you know, genetically predisposed to trying things out all the time.
Or when revenue potentially comes with it, right? Like if a customer's saying to you, if
yes,
you can build this, you know, and you're
yeah.
like, oh fuck, and then you start thinking about the money that you can bring in on the side if you white label this and do this at the same time. But yeah,
100%, right? And these are big companies in the construction industry saying, here's a check, let's make this happen.
Yeah.
And you know, again, first-time founders, our inexperience probably led us down slightly too many paths.
Yeah.
But all of those learnings are great. You know, they're gold. They're part of it. I think there are some mistakes, and I don't know. You can learn a lot from the experiences of others.
Yeah.
But there are certain mistakes I feel like we've read about and we knew, but we only knew academically.
Yeah.
And when you feel them, it's a very, very different lesson.
Dude, you literally like it's. You know, you get lured into them and you just get caught up in the romanticism.
They're great opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say no to a great opportunity, but you have to. Because you just do a disservice to what you're actually doing.
Yeah. I had this conversation, so with Dan and I doing an investment, we had this very conversation with a early stage founder as well. I might get some water as well. Were you there, mate? Where he's building a thing, right? And it was a really cool product, great idea. And based off his research, you know, building his MVP, stumbled across 3 or 4 other things that could have been really good.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know, so the TAM's not just this now, it's this and that. Yeah. And we've got so many ways that we could succeed now, right? And I had to say to him, but that's not the right idea, man. Yeah. And, you know, you can see his just face, like, just drop. And he said, what do you mean? You know, like, there's multiple opportunities. And I said, well, you're going to be doing that 10%, that 10%, that 10%. You need to go 100 on this, bro. You know, like, this is the one. And I reckon that's...
And eventually you can get, you can get past that. You can do multiple streams. At a certain point, you know, diversify your fucking whatever. But...
Early days.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I come back to that. I feel like... maybe emotionally or whatever, 8 years feels like a long time. But from a business perspective, we are in our infancy because we're not at the point where we're like, you know, trying to build multiple divisions and all the rest of it. Yeah. We are 100% dedicated and focused on the problem that we solve, that we've been solving for 8 years.
It's funny, man. So I you know, as you know, right, we work with lots of founders. I interview a lot on the podcast, and the same thing happens all the time where I just chat with these people who you externally, right, you probably go, man, they got their shit together. They're doing New Zealand proud. They're doing really great. And it's probably only in the last 3 months, that they feel like that's the external thing now. It's been 7 years where they've been like, oh, this is so hard. It feels like I'm forever in the weeds. I've never really got out of it. But then you have your little moment where it's suddenly something takes off, right? You get product market fit, people start buying it, you start blowing up everywhere, the marketing comes, and then all of a sudden you've gone from zero to hero, really quickly. And a lot of them, like I just sit down with it and they're like, man, only 3 months ago, I was like ready to throw it away, right? And it's been a long fucking 8 years, but now it feels like it's just starting, right? And we have to pony up and go again. And so...
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's the same. It takes everyone, I think, who ends up being successful. There's a huge backlog of work that they've put in. Yeah. Huge backlog. Right back to what we were saying before about, selling guitar lessons and getting a band together to go play at pubs and 21sts and weddings and shit.
Yeah.
Like that takes sales, marketing, buying equipment, accounting, making sure that your clients are happy, getting referrals off them, all that shit. That's all the education that we had. And so if CONQA's a successful organization, it doesn't start with when CONQA started.
Yeah.
And it's, musicians are the same, artists probably, like all of these people who end up with a moment. It's not a moment. It's the moment is the accumulation of a fuckload of work.
100 hours singing into a hairbrush in the mirror,
totally,
right? Yeah,
totally.
Fuck yeah, man. And I think that's important for people to know and understand, right? Like there's people who I know that they're like, I've been going for a year, I don't know if it's going to work. And I'm like, man, a year?
A year, I know.
Yeah.
I know, but it feels like that,
Well,
you got to have those moments to keep your energy up and to keep it going.
1 year in startups is 3 years in the real world, right? Like the amount of social, commercial pressure and everything that's on your shoulders as a founder, is...
And there's no escaping that pressure because you hire somebody, now you're responsible for somebody's salary. I mean, I remember that pressure. I remember vividly when we had a bit of a payroll starting. And I called one of our investors advisors, and was like, man, it's starting to feel quite real.
Do you remember the first Christmas period that you were like, you're like...
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, definitely a couple of Christmases, and I remember the first big churn, and kind of going, "Oh fuck, we're rewriting all of our budgets now." I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't catastrophic, but it was big. I think it was probably less than 10% of our revenue, but maybe more than 5%.
Yeah, but when you're in that period where that is like the average of your salary versus your revenue and likes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's, you have those scary moments. I think that's where I have huge admiration for solo founders because I don't know if I could do that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about because previous podcast that we did, solo founder, and she was all about, hey, I love the fact that I'm the solo founder and I can do this. And and I was a solo founder for a while, and then I brought Dan in to help me set up Auckland, and now I love having Dan, man. It's like Dan and I debate every day and chat, and sometimes I just go, man, I haven't got it in me today. Can you help out? And he's like, yeah, he'll step up, and then vice versa.
Yeah,
and so I don't know how people do it on their own personally.
I don't know either. I mean, I genuinely don't. I reckon I wouldn't. I don't think I would actually.
Yeah. How was it founding a business with friends though?
Yeah, super interesting. Again, pros and cons.
Still mates?
Yep. Yep. I think so. You'd have to ask them as well. It comes with a couple of things that are awesome. So close friends, right? We were all close friends. Dan and I play. We shared guitar students. We played in the bands together. All that sort of stuff. I think that the thing that was awesome is how quickly we were having really difficult, important conversations about roles and responsibilities, accountability, values, culture, really open and foundational conversations that sort of set a tone really early on because we were already close enough and had trust and belief in each other enough and liked each other enough to have the batteries to kind of get there.
Yeah.
So that was great. And I actually think another thing that's been important from that perspective is that we have built a culture of having fun.
Yeah.
I hope. But we have built a culture of, or we've certainly intended to build a culture where like we enjoy working together as a group. And again, the work's hard. We work, we've had setbacks and all the difficulties that come with building a business. And if you're not also having fun, again, I just don't know if you can get through it and it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So we try and make sure that we're not too serious about it. And I think having a basis of strong friendship has built a culture of that being enabled. Like, I don't think you need a professional boundary and you're not friends with the people you work with. Like, fuck, we party together all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, less these days, but, certainly back in the day.
Yeah, man. Yeah, my theory is, right, if, like, I drove a performance culture, right? So, like, I want everyone to be high performing, push them to be the best that they can be. And then if they're prepared to give me that, my duty is to make them have as much fun and enjoy their jobs as possible. And so there'll be times where I'll be like, let's just get the fuck out of the office and go, have a beer or go play golf or, go and learn something, do it away from keyboard days.
Yeah.
And that's because, like, why would you do this? Why would you do a hard job, right, if you didn't enjoy it as well?
Totally. It's an all-in thing, and all-in has to include friendship and, commiseration and congratulation and the high-definition relationships that come with giving a shit about what you do and who you do it with.
Yeah. And then you've got the Steve Jobs model, right, which is fear and, like he's authoritarian, but people just respected the shit out of him and they wanted to work with him and be around that.
Yep, sure. I mean, obviously Apple's the most valuable company in the world and
maybe there's something in that.
Maybe something in that, but it's just, I think...
That's not my culture though, right?
Like, yeah, it's not mine. And I think inauthenticity is so obvious.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to build a culture because fucking Steve Jobs did it, that's cool. But it's going to be really obvious if that's not you.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to buy in and come with you because it's not true. It's not real.
I don't think you could rock a turtleneck anyway, mate.
I could actually. So
what is CONQA's culture? If you had to describe the culture now, how would you describe it in a sentence?
I think all in's not bad.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, we have our cultural values, which we try and live and breathe all the time, which is accountability, transparency, and team first.
Yeah.
And I think that those things all together are when you add them all together, I think that they equal a high trust, high performance environment.
Yeah.
So you get the result is greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah. I think that's true at CONQA when we're at our best. Yeah. Because the way that we can assist and work together to get a great outcome, at the moment we're kind of on fire, and I'm seeing that everywhere. Yeah. Things get done in like a week that, may have taken other companies or felt like they might have taken a month. They just get done, and then the next thing happens, and you get this incredible spiral effect because people believe that the people next to them are doing that work, and they're handing it on, and then somebody takes that and runs with it in a different direction. So when you've got that accountability, transparency, and you believe you are part of a team first, and so we try and remove the egotism and the individualism out of it, and you are part of a group, an organism that is, collectively driving towards an outcome.
Honestly, man, from working with you guys, it's evident. Like when we put people in there, and when people stay in there for that reason, right, is that they feel a part of that, right? And they don't feel like a part of that, like the Kool-Aid drinking startup, like, hey, we're going to start up. They feel like they can make change, right? They feel like they can get shit done.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Again, I think being three inexperienced founders is like kind of part of that. We go, fuck, I don't know. What do you reckon? Because I don't know. What do you reckon? And that, again, that builds, that DNA builds and builds. And yeah, I'm just a huge believer in authenticity. And that doesn't mean that you can't work on yourself and try and make, the way that you communicate or learn how to coach, because you're suddenly responsible for people's learning and development. Those things you can learn, but you can be authentic in how you're learning. And so I just think when you are clear about who you are, and that's present in the values of the company, that's really obvious to people when they come in that this is a realistic, authentic place to be.
I think so. And I think when you're in the trenches with someone, right? Because you can see that they're with you and they're working hard.
It's going to be exposed anyway, right?
Yeah. And if you're with one of these people, man, I'll run with you, and I'll give you more than 100%. You know,
Yeah.
I'll give you whatever you need because I believe it, right? And so,
And I love all that. I mean, that's the thing that keeps us going. Is like it is fun. It's fucking fun to like solve these problems, and you get a call from a customer who loves it, and you love working with these people who are passionate about it together as well. So, I mean, I get a lot of energy from just getting stuck in.
Yeah.
And I know that Dan and Pete do too.
yeah, awesome, man. So we talked a lot about the stuff that you found, like that's the hard shit, right? What have been if you were to look back now, right, and say, right, this is the shit that's like fuck yeah moments. What are the fuck yeah moments for you? So who was the first customer that came in after those initial 6 customers? Like the first customer that you spoke to that you didn't speak to as part of the process. Do you remember that?
The first one, yeah, I probably do actually. I think I can. Well, there are a couple of those early ones that I remember feeling, pretty proud about.
Yeah.
There are a couple that I think the one that stands out to me. So we started in 2000 and we released the MVP December 2015, and by March 2017 we had sold to a pretty big client over in Australia, and I moved over, and there's a photo of Dan, Pete, and I standing on a balcony in some pub over in Melbourne, having just sold that, and that's a great moment.
Yeah.
I remember thinking,
This is it.
that's pretty wild.
We're doing it now.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that was a big one, yeah. I definitely remember that. I mean, a couple of revenue milestones that were pretty special, a couple of Christmas parties that were pretty celebratory. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a collection of lots of little versions of those moments, I reckon, for me.
And what's to come, man? What's the North Star now?
So we're quite regionally, we're only in Australia and New Zealand, and a little bit in South Pacific. So I think that we solve a problem that is genuinely universal, and I think if we can get ourselves into a position where we are actually globally agnostic and available to anyone who needs our software, that's our North Star. We don't need to go wider in a problem sense.
Yeah.
Like our problem is meaty.
Yeah.
But we can collect customers and build out into regions that we're not in yet.
What's the difference between markets in terms of the nuances of the product? Is there much?
Not in terms of the product, but I mean, in terms of the regulations, yep.
Yeah.
But we don't hard code anything like that, and that's all just part of the implementation of an account.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, we're a really simple piece of software, and that's actually harder to do than it might sound at first. We work hard to stay simple because the people who use our software, like on site, they might be in a basement and it's cold. They don't want to fuck around with something complicated. They want to be able to input their information, make sure it's correct, and get on with the job that they're doing.
Yeah, and software isn't largely their be-all and end-all, right?
No, not at all.
It's a means to an end to get their job done so they can get back on site.
Yeah, absolutely. It's risk mitigation. It's prompts to ensure that they're doing the right things to the standards that are required. And it's sharing of information so that the people, as I said before, the people in the office know what's going on and can make the people's lives who are actually down there in the coalface, in the basement, up on the 100th floor, they can be scheduling things to make their job easier, and that's the kind of positive spiral effect. And the culture in the construction industry has been quite combative for a long time, and particularly in a bit of a bust moment that we're having now, those conflicts are quite obvious.
Yeah.
But it's actually a really collaborative industry by nature. It's 50 different companies coming together with different specialized skill sets to build a building. All the buildings that you see on the skyline. They're complicated. They're 50 stories. They're not simple things to construct. And so what we really try and do is enable pathways for people to be more collaborative and understand and be transparent with statuses and information so that there can be that positive spiral loop and more collaborative outcomes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I've worked on sites in Melbourne.
Yeah.
I was an apprentice painter back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And used to work big commercial jobs. And, man, it was so fucking frustrating when you were told that, yeah, you've got the run of it now, come in, and you turn up and...
Isn't it?
Everyone will be everywhere still, and you're like, we can't fucking paint. Like the plumber's still putting pipes in.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And then you've got to charge a variation, and they go, no, that's incorrect, and then you have a fucking argument about it, and that's where the problems lie.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to solve.
Yeah. Awesome. So, like, it's funny, right? So my brother, I think you met my brother.
Yeah,
actually,
me
Mark.
brother.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's just moved to Auckland, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And so he works in recruitment for the design sort of engineering industry.
Yep.
And we were chatting, and he was like, yeah, man, it's hard times in Melbourne at the moment. Like, the construction industry's, like, feeling it. There's a lot of companies going under because of people not paying and the likes.
Yep.
Are you guys feeling that?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I mean, payment scheduling and progress claiming is a big part of what we do.
Yeah.
So the evidence that people collect in our software is used to claim for months worth of work.
Yeah.
And that's a really contentious issue often. People are incentivized to not
Pay.
Yeah. Which is, obviously a pretty shitty culture, but we do quite a lot of work in making sure that people get paid for the work that they've done.
Yeah.
Via variations and progress claims, and we've got a partnership with a company called PayApps, and so that again makes connecting the evidence that you collect with your actual claim. So those things are really important to us to make sure that we see that the trade contractors, who are the predominant customer of ours, they have to fight for space all the time.
Yeah.
And we try and shine a spotlight on the work that they do, or enable them to, have that transparent evidence available for them to be able to, prove the work that they've done is up to standard. And that's something they've struggled with in the past.
And how was COVID for you guys with the construction industry sort of halting?
So we found actually it's been harder this year than any other year, because for the industry.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was to do with the subsidies that the governments in New Zealand and Australia provided, and also, one of our sub-markets is infrastructure.
Yeah.
And in New Zealand it was shovel-ready projects, and in Australia they pumped money into the infrastructure sector, and they still are now.
Yeah.
Infrastructure for us is actually our highest growing customer segment at the moment, because, everyone's behind on their infrastructure work.
Yeah.
And they need to be doing a whole lot of it. And when commercial's down, I don't think a government will accept that the whole construction industry will drop with commercial construction project pipeline dropping. So they start to invest more in infrastructure. And for us, that's our counterweight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we feel relatively well protected. And also what's been great is that it's proved to us that we are a business critical tool.
Yeah.
So, when everyone was going through every single line item and going, what can we get rid of? Where can we save some money? And we grew in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. For us, that proved
Validation.
It was validating that, we were actually a business critical tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting, right? So as of today, they've just said that we are actually in recession, right?
Yeah.
And so I was listening to an economist from ANZ the other day, and he was like, oh, well, there'll be some data coming out soon saying that we're in a recession. But he said from the data, it looks like that we're tapering out of it now, because the data is a little bit old before it catches up.
Yep.
And so who knows what's going to happen with the market, right? But
construction's up. Even in the recessions, construction's up a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's, I think, it's hard because construction is actually residential, infrastructure, and commercial. And residential is, we don't play in the residential space, but it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
People were knocking down quarter acres and building 9 townhouses, and that stuff's great. Like, I sort of have an opinion on that one way or the other, but
you can be political, mate. It's okay.
Well, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a really good thing for us to have these.
As do I. Knock down the fucking rainy, all those shit houses and put up 6 brand new fucking amazing townhouses. Yeah.
Totally. Warm, dry,
yeah.
double glazed. Yeah, totally.
And make it fucking easier. let the government make it easier with the
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we need, but I mean, to go back to infrastructure, we need the infrastructure to support it because, so I live in Te Aratū Peninsula and there's some amazing new developments going up. There's a whole new community blossoming. It's fantastic. There's like one bus every hour.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't fucking work.
Yeah.
You know, there's one road in, one road out, and that's part of being on a peninsula. But then there's just one bus. And it's just, you know, we need more.
Yeah, man.
But anyway, so yeah, commercial and infrastructure is pretty strong.
Yeah. It's it's going to be an interesting couple of years ahead, man. Sort of watching how this is all sort of plays out now. We're obviously in New Zealand, the election year, you know, is like as a business owner, you're you're starting to think about making bets on plays and the likes, depending on what happens with the government, because it is a small country where the government does really change, you know, what could happen. Like if National gets in, they'll spend a fuckload more on infrastructure and the likes. If Labor gets in, they potentially won't. And so, yeah, who knows, man? It's going to be definitely an interesting time, but I feel like these are the hard years, right? That when you look back on, you know, in the future and you say, man, we got through those well, you know, like they threw everything at us, you know, in those hard years, and then now we get to enjoy the good years again. And so there's a lot of startups out there who, for me, they're like shitting themselves now, like the tech, you know, market resetting and everyone losing their jobs and the likes. And I'm like, it's terrible, right? It's shit when people lose their jobs, don't get me wrong, but they're just going to flood out to the ecosystem now, like Zeros and the Atlassians and the, you know, people that they're flooding out to the ecosystem. They're helping us all to make better decisions in that smaller business life. And if we can get through this, it's only going to get better.
I totally agree, and I think so. Between 2015 and 2022-ish, you know, COVID sort of being a bit different, we were in a market that was playing on easy mode to start a business.
So it was easy bull market, right?
And great for us to be able to play, you know, get started in easy mode. But I actually think that this year in particular has been a wonderful, and don't get me wrong, there are some people who are really struggling with losing jobs, and I totally sympathize with that. But as a
level up, right?
As in helping us actually understand the value of a dollar, you know, the way in which you can organize to be more effective, what you do and don't need. I think it's been actually a really critical thing to go through, and I think it hopefully will mean that the businesses that come out of it in a year or two or three are better placed to capitalize on the halcyon days to come.
Yeah, man. And the companies that are offering good cultures, good respectful workplaces, you know, are going to be the companies of choice again to find people. You know,
totally agree.
Not the highest paying ones. Like people have been making fucking bank for the last 4 years, man. Right? It's been, as a recruiter, sometimes saying, "Hey, man, I'm so sorry, but this is going to cost you this," right? And you're like, "What the fuck? That's 40K more than 6 months ago." And I'm like, "I know. I'm sorry. You know, that's the market."
But I think you're right about that. And like thinking about, you know, the politics of an election year, what's also really interesting is you can't just take into account what's it going to do for the market that you serve, but you have to think about it like, what does it do for the people within your team as well?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that there's a responsibility that we have as custodians of a business, you know, to consider the kind of totality of the impact on you, the people within your team and the industry that you serve.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Why the fuck do we do it, hey?
I know, and then you have a kid.
Yeah,
and that really fucks it all up. I mean, for the best, but it's I feel like, God, I used to have a lot of time.
Yeah, well, wait until you have two. It actually gets easier when you have two, because then they start hanging out with each other.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't rush into it.
No,
you know?
No. My little boy's 9 months old, so I think we got ways to wait till there's two of them.
Yeah, you haven't forgotten how hard the early 3 months is yet. 9 months, you're still like, fuck, I'm still in there.
Yeah,
you know?
Big time.
Yeah,
big time.
Fuck yeah, man. Hey, so if you've seen any of the episodes this season, man, you'll see that we're finishing now. We're trying to just share some sort of little nugget of information from you back to the audience, right? And so at the bottom of the show notes, we're going to put a little link to something that's moved you, whether it be a podcast, a book, you know, a person, a blog that you read, a YouTube video that you watched. And so is there something that you're like, hey, this is it? It doesn't necessarily have to be about your work in terms of CONQA, but it could just be something that moves you. What would you sort of send down to the bottom of the show notes and tell people to go off and look at? Is it the band that used to play in? Is there a thing? Is it still online? Did you ever get on Spotify?
Yep, definitely. Shout out to Ed and the Dictaphone Blues.
Yeah, we'll pop that in the show notes for sure.
Well, I don't know if it'll go in the show notes, but my old man sends out a poem to me and my siblings every morning, like him and
he writes a poem and sends you.
Yeah, so him and Mum go and have a coffee in the morning, and he'll write us a poem. And so he's done it for about 4 years or something. So we've got whatever that is, 1,000 poems. And for his birthday the other day, we went and selected a favorite, one or two each, and we all gave him our favorites back to him for his birthday, and then we all wrote him a poem.
Oh, dude, you're gonna make me cry like I'm watching one of these TikTok videos where it's like fucking.
That was a pretty nice moment,
dude. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is really.
And it
cool.
makes me think about being a parent as well. Starting to become a parent. First child was born 9 months ago, and like, yeah. Those little things that you do sometimes that build up into something, they call it memory making or whatever. Yeah. And so being intentional about showing up, however, to whoever matters.
So someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, right? They said, they were talking about business and asking me advice or whatever it may be. And they said, what we hope your legacy is? And I said, that I've given something to my kids that they just constantly feel happy about, or like even if after I've died, that there's something like that they can refer back to as that was special and that was our moment and likes. And so I'm always doing little things like that for my kids. I love the poem thing. That's if I could write poems, I'd do that too. And
sometimes they're really silly.
Yeah, but fuck, man.
It's a great. It builds up over time to be a pretty important little collection of writing.
Yeah, man. I saw something on TikTok the other day, man, and that's what I said. It almost made me cry. Was this father had left his daughter a little post-it note in her lunch every day, she kept every single one of them, and then she had it framed in this huge thing with like 1,000 post-it notes on it.
And it's those it's just being intentional and giving that time and effort, which can be minimal in the moment, but builds up.
Yeah, and I think there's that, like, leadership, right? It's finding that intentional little moment where you can just tell someone, hey, I give a shit about you, and I try and do that as a leader, and I definitely try and do it as a father, but that's cool, man. I really like that. Shout out to your dad. Yeah, awesome. Hey, man, well, that's really cool. We definitely won't put that in the show notes because that's a private thing for you and your family. But we'll definitely throw your band down there so that people can go off and jam to them after this, man. And I'm going to leave you to it now, buddy. Thank you so much for coming in. I'll let you get back home and to your little boy so that you can start writing some poems for him and go from there, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been awesome.
Cheers, dude.
Cheers.
So Barney's left now. Thank you for watching and listening along. I was really moved by that last thing at the end with his father and writing poems every day. I think that's so cool, and it just reinforces that we all work so much. We work hard. We're trying to create futures and careers for our kids, but sometimes it's just the little things that we do that really move people. And for me to ask that question to Barney and him to talk about his dad and the poem that his dad sends him and his siblings really moved me. And, I think that it's a phenomenal thing. And if Barney's dad's watching this, good on you, mate. You're an awesome bloke. And so thank you to everyone else that's watching along and listening along. Thanks for coming on the journey with us. We're deep into season 2 now, and the subscriber numbers are really building up now. We're going for a milestone, so I'd love you to jump on right now and hit that subscribe button if you're not already, and share it around, share the love. Send a poem and send this podcast link to one of your siblings right now, one of your friends, one of your family members. Let them hear Barney's story because it's a great story. It's authentic. It's honest. It's really just showing how 3 blokes had a really fucking smart idea to think differently about how they were going about setting up a startup in the first place. How they looked at, different elements of what makes a successful company rather than just saying, let's build a product. And so thanks very much. Until next time, see you later.
This podcast is produced by John Otaka from Empire Films.